Okay, so you've probably been hearing a fair bit about the writers and actor strikes in Hollywood, but the reality is what happens in Hollywood has consequences outside the US. That is very much the case right here in Canada, where so many TV shows and movies are made. So today on the show, how the strikes are affecting the industry right here in Canada. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Listen, at this point, it has been a few days since the Hollywood actors went on strike, and it's been more than 2 months since the Hollywood writers' strike began. It's the first time since 1960 that both the actors and the writers' unions have been out at the same time, and actors seem just as determined as the writers to stand firm.
It's this AI, it's the no money, it's the no residuals, it's the disrespect.
I actually make less money working in film than I did in the year 1990. But I'm telling you, if you want this voice, you gotta pay for it.
At a certain point, you have to just say, who's going to determine what our value is? Well, look at these thousands of people. Right. We're determining what our value is.
Those are just some of the voices from the picket line in Hollywood. What I want us to get into today is the impact that these strikes are already having here in Canada. Anthony Q. Farrell is one of this country's top writers and showrunners. He's a member of both the American Writers Union, that's the WGA, and the Canadian Screenwriters Guild. And Carolina Bartczak is a Canadian actor. She has a new series coming out on a big streaming site in August, but because of the strike, she can't even promote it. So Carolina and Anthony are here. We're going to talk about these strikes. We're going to talk about how you've been reacting to the environment post these strikes. Carolina, Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Of course.
Always nice.
Carolina, I'm going to start with you, actually,
Sure.
on this one, because what a predicament, right? Like, you've been working your career, you've been trying to get to the show, you land the show is about to come out, you can't promote it. You can't even talk about it, can't even name it. What is writing on, what is writing on this for you personally?
So anytime you get a job, it is a massive celebration. It is so hard to actually get work. To get work on a show that you care so deeply about, happens every couple of years. I've been waiting for the show to come out for 2 years. They've really postponed the release of it.
Yeah.
And as an actor, as the release approaches, you start prepping in a certain way. You hire a PR company. You start looking for hair, makeup, wardrobe for your appearances, for your red carpet. You buy flights to LA to meet new agents. You want to really, it's lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
You really have to catch the moment while it's happening. And you've got a couple weeks before everyone forgets about the show and watches the next thing.
Yeah.
So it is so important to capitalize on something like that.
Yeah.
So when I heard 3 days ago or 4 days ago that the strike was happening, my heart absolutely just fell out of my body. Like I was so upset. I've already invested a lot of money into PR, into, finding stylists and all this kind of stuff. And also, I was an actor on the show, but producers and writers have been working on this show for 5-6 years. So for their work to culminate in almost nothing is so heartbreaking for them even more.
I think something maybe people don't necessarily understand with the industry is that, publicists don't just hang around ready to promote your work. You got to hire them ahead of time for this. You got to keep them on retainer for a period of time. A lot of planning goes into this 2-week period of time where maybe people are talking about the show. We should say you're a member of the Canadian Actors Union, not the American Union that's currently on strike. But because we can't really name the show that you're a part of because we want to stay on the right side of the strike restrictions around actors promoting their work. What is it like for you to sort of get to this moment and not be able to get word out about the show?
I feel absolutely unsure of what to do. I feel like I'm jogging on the spot. I want to do something, but I can't. And all my colleagues on the show are also not able to do anything. Right now, I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs in a bit of a panic saying, oh, God, if the strike ends tomorrow, am I going to be ready to jump back in the game and be ready for the premiere, be ready for the appearances? But then at the same time, I have to be wary of investing more time and more finances into doing so.
Because this is your own money. This is not a studio's money.
Oh, yeah. This is, you have to hire your own PR.
Yeah.
There's, red carpets look like a lot of fun. They're a lot of work and they're a lot of stress.
Yeah, it's not just the moment where people sort of step on the carpet.
I know.
It's
It kind of, when I see people stepping on the carpet, I'm like, oh God, they look amazing. They look like they're having so much fun.
Yeah.
And then I remember what happens behind the scenes, how many people you have to hire to make sure that you look easy breezy and amazing.
Yeah, so there's actually a photo of you that is usable. So they actually get your name out there, right? That's kind of part of the process. Anthony, you were here 2 months ago, and even then, man, you painted a pretty bleak picture of the impact that the writer's strike was going to have on Canada. It's been 2 months since then.
Yeah.
How has it gotten worse?
I'll say this. I think I can speak for here in Toronto. There are starting to, actually, I was actually in Winnipeg last week too, and I visited a set that was looking pretty good. And so there are jobs starting to open up. There are shows that are starting to happen, but they're Canadian shows, right?
Yeah.
So those things are starting to creep back up. I remember I was here with Joan Chell, who's a makeup designer.
That's right.
And and at that time she was like, "There's it's nothing going on. There's stuff starting to pick up right now.
Canadian production
starting to pick up a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's some good news. The service work still pretty much non-existent, and now with the SAG after strike, there's nothing's going to be able to happen here in Canada. So for the people who are who would normally work on those shows, they're going to have to rely on unemployment. They're going to have to rely on their savings, rely on those things until we figure out a resolution to this thing. So yeah, it stays bleak until we figure this out, unfortunately.
I guess we should explain to people that, just because a production is sort of being produced in Canada and using even lots of Canadian actors, if it's an American production, likely it has a big American star attached to it. That star can't work, and so therefore suddenly the production work kind of grounds to a halt, right? That's what we're picturing here?
Yeah, because the idea is with these unions is if you are a SAG actor, you're gonna if you're doing a show here in Canada, the chances are you're going to be doing it under a SAG contract because those contracts, quite frankly, they're better for the actor. They're better for the actor to do a SAG contract rather than an actor contract, because it means you'll have access to residuals and those different things. And so if they're under that contract and there's a chance that they won't be able to work. Now, the nice thing about the SAG after a strike is that they are allowing people to work for companies that are not one of these struck companies. So there are still voiceover artists, there are still commercials, there's still certain things that you can do in the union that are not connected to the AMPTP, which is nice.
That's the American producers who are currently not negotiating.
Exactly. Yeah. So with the writers, we don't really have access to. We kind of. With WJ, we kind of just work with those people. So we're not doing anything, but at least there is a small outlet for certain members of SAG.
Anthony, I want to play you a clip of Fran Drescher, who is the head of SAG-AFTRA. So this is the actors announcing that they're going on strike on Thursday. That strike began on Friday. Here's Fran Drescher on Thursday.
I cannot believe it, quite frankly, how far apart we are on so many things, how they plead poverty, that they're losing money left and right when giving hundreds of millions of dollars to their CEOs. It is disgusting. Shame on them.
So it's one thing, I think, for writers to go on strike. Listen, I love writers. They look wonderful, but they don't have the recognizable face and power of being Fran Drescher, being a face that a lot of people already have an emotional sort of impact with.
Yeah.
So when we saw that SAG-AFTRA was going to go on strike, that Fran Drescher was announcing it, and suddenly we're dealing with entirely different situations. Studios are dealing with a different situation than they were with writers. Do you see a difference in the way that they have to respond to actors than they do to writers?
First of all, preach, Nanny.
Shout out Nanny all the time. Yes.
I should also mention I am also a member of SAG. I'm in all the unions.
Yes.
Yes, they have to deal with it differently. And the thing is, with the writers on strike, they made a deal with the directors. They're hoping they would make a deal with the actors so that they could continue doing some things. Maybe they would improvise, or they would have old scripts, or they'd have different things they can use so that the directors and the actors could keep making content and they'd be fine, right?
Yeah.
without the actors, now they have to rely on their libraries. You see what's happening now with a lot of different networks who have access to streamers. ABC is now starting to pull stuff from Disney Plus to put on their network.
Yeah.
I think Miss Marvel is going to be on ABC on the fall schedule now.
Maybe you'll have 5 more people watch it. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and CBS is pulling Yellowstone from Paramount Plus to put on their network.
Yeah.
So they are in a place now where they are going to have to shift their plan where they would maybe get a few different new things. They're not going to be able to have access to that stuff anymore. So for me, I'm a little more optimistic now that SAG's also on strike, but hopefully our combined efforts will lead them to come back to the table so we can get this thing moving. So,
Carolina, I got to ask you, you have a podcast about the film industry. What are you hearing from other actors in Canada? How are people feeling?
Well, one thing that I think is also important to mention is that there's another labor dispute happening with ACTRA currently right now. It's been going on for 15 months. We have advertisers who are boycotting ACTRA members. So
that's the Canadian Actors
That's
Union.
the Canadian Actors Union.
Yeah.
Brands like McDonald's, Home Hardware, Wendy's, H&R Block refuses to hire Canadian actors in the union because they don't want to pay into our RSPs or into our healthcare. They're actually preying upon non-union actors, giving them worse condition, worse pay. So actors in Canada have already been in trouble for about 15 months. So now that service productions, American productions shooting in Canada are not happening, that's 2 sources of income that we no longer have access to. We literally just have Canadian television to count on.
Right.
So people are going to lose their houses.
Do you have a sense of, first of all, do you have a sense of like the size difference between the Canadian industry and the American TV shows and movies being produced in Canada?
If I had to guess, and this is purely a guess, I would say so also what happens, January to April are the slow months for actors. And then May, it usually kicks off till November. So actors know that they have to tighten their belts January to April. Yeah. And then May 2nd happened. The WGA went on strike.
That's a writer's strike, yeah.
And then now the actor's strike. So I would say, if I had to guess, I don't want anyone to yell at me if my numbers are wrong. I would say like in the summer at the height, you've got like 50, 60 productions in Ontario.
Yeah.
I would say now we're down to like 6, 7.
So 10% of the normal.
10%. That's my guess.
Yeah.
But it's going to, if anyone went to work and all of a sudden found out they couldn't work for a year, most people would be in trouble. And I think actors are the same. We're pretty good at saving our money, knowing that we have to, survive between jobs. Yeah. But now knowing that the busy season is going to be completely slow, I mean, that's terrifying. People are going to have to leave the industry. We're going to lose a lot of artists, I think. There's going to be a lot of pent-up frustration.
Anthony, is that in line with what you're hearing too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I already know some people who are having to sell their homes and trying to figure things out because of the ACTRA commercial stuff, right? So it's real, and and especially in LA. We were just talking about this before, actually. Like, Toronto's a little bit different than LA. And LA's like you could throw a rock and hit a studio. Like there's studios everywhere. So that city's kind of like it's shutting down, and Toronto's in a place now that there's so many different jobs that rely on the industry here. Like if there's a set happening, then that means money not just for the actors, for the crew, but it means money for restaurants. It means money for coffee shops. It means money for the places that like the locations that we're using. So there's a lot of it leads to a lot of heartache in a lot of different ways.
I saw there was a story in the Globe and Mail a few days ago about all the different businesses that sort of rely on TIFF, for example, the Toronto International Film Festival, and how, the fact that TIFF might be threatened by the possibility that stars might not be able to show or promote their movies subtly means all these sort of ancillary businesses also end up being impacted. We should remind people, listen, my name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Carolina Bartczak is here. She's a Canadian actor. Anthony Q. Farrell is a writer and showrunner. We're talking about the double strike of American actors and writers and how that is having consequences here in Canada. Anthony, of course, yes, there was all these U.S. productions shooting in Canada, and they've been mostly shut down, as Carolina was mentioning. But what about the Canadian-produced content? Like, shouldn't this theoretically be like a huge opportunity?
Yes, theoretically.
Okay, go on. Let's go.
As someone with a minor in mathematics to go along with my major in theatrical arts, I love
do the trigonometry.
I love theory.
Yeah.
Yes, in theory. But here's what's also happening at the same time. You've got Bill C-11 happening, right? So this is a bill that basically It's gone through Parliament. It's now in a place where the CRTC is looking at the bill, trying to figure out how to engage all of the different distributors and what.
That's the bill asking the streamers to sort of have the same amount of Canadian content.
Also,
Exactly.
the CRTC is like the broadcaster police, is how I describe them. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So we're waiting. Everyone's kind of on tenterhooks, kind of waiting to find out how they're going to basically enforce the rules that have come down. So a lot of the different broadcasters who have already had to tighten their belts as well because they're getting less and less money because American streamers are not putting money back into the Canadian system. That's what's happening right now. If you have canceled your Rogers or your Fibe or whatever cable thing you have and you picked up all the different things like Netflix, Amazon, Paramount, the money you're putting into those systems, they're not going back to the Canadian system. So now with Bill C-11, they're hoping that will start happening. But because it hasn't been for the last little while, we have less money for Canadian productions. And a lot of these broadcasters now they would love to spring and jump and bounce and use the people that are kind of like not working on service work right now, but they also have their issues with greenlighting stuff because they don't have the funds to do all the things they want to do. So in theory, it would be the time to be like, oh, there are all these people who are not working in Canada. Let's do more Canadian content. But there's not enough money to make that an actuality.
I gotta say, listen, this show is an arts and entertainment show. We are generally speaking about all the things that sort of connect us to the entertainment industry, right? But this is a pretty bleak conversation, Carolina.
I know, we're so grim.
It's okay that it's because it sounds like that's kind of what people in the industry are kind of feeling. They're sort of like coming to grips with this kind of the grimness of the reality of the moment.
Yeah.
Is that where you are?
Yeah, pretty much. And I was just thinking, the other day I was sitting at a friend's restaurant. It's called Danny's Tavern on College Street. And David Cronenberg was shooting next door. And at the end of the shoot, he came by with Vincent Cassel and Diane Kruger and the crew and the cast.
That's a good day. That's
great.
It's
a good day. He came and spent like thousands of dollars like buying pizza and buying drinks. And I was thinking like that money goes into the pocket of the waiters and the person doing the dishes and the cook. And everyone had a great night because, the Toronto film industry is $1 billion industry.
Yeah. And that's just Toronto.
That's just Toronto.
Yeah.
That extends from Hamilton to Sudbury to Ottawa.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of people affected by this. And I hope the silver lining is that we are able to renegotiate a better deal for hopefully both sides. Every time there's a new technology, we need to renegotiate our contract. It's like when the radio was invented, there needed to be new contracts made.
Yeah.
We haven't done that since streaming came along.
Yeah.
It's still considered a new media, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
And now that we have generative AI, all of a sudden, like the boogeyman, we need to have a discussion about how that's going to affect everyone.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that as someone who's double striking right now,
as an actor and a
writer, it's important that we do this because I was on strike, and we talked about this before, and I was on strike in 2007, and back then the broadcasters were saying, what do you need internet money for? That's internet. You want some of the YouTube? It doesn't make any sense. We'll never be on the internet. That's what they were saying in 2007. And now they're like just on the internet. So if we didn't fight for those things back then, it would be an even bleaker situation right now. So it's important that we continue the fight.
It is worth noting that it was like maybe 6 or 8 months after the writer's strike in 2007, 2008 ended that Hulu was launched. Like it was like it was not multiple years. It was like this is in the pipeline. As you know, like it's not like studios are not thinking about that future. And it's not like that's not informing, their negotiating position right now. Maybe to end this on a realistic note, I don't want to put you in a position to be like, I want to be, overly positive when I'm not actually feeling that way. Carolina, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you say, how optimistic are you feeling that this is going to get resolved and it's going to get better? Honest answer.
It will get resolved.
Okay.
Will it get better? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think what most of us are worried about is when.
Yeah.
And speaking to one person, they're like, oh, for sure in the next 2 weeks. And then I speak to another person, they're like, it's 3 to 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So I think all of us are we don't know where to look. We don't know who to look to for information because I think it is so up in the air. Maybe today, The studios are like, we cannot take this anymore. We need TIFF to happen. We need Venice to happen. We need our shows to go out because we're going to run out of content by January.
Yeah. Maybe
that's the conversation. Or maybe they're saying like, well, let's see how many people can lose their houses.
Yikes. Okay. Anthony, last time that you were here, you were actually like, somewhat optimistic.
Yeah.
How are you feeling now?
I think I'm still optimistic that a deal will be worked out. I think it'll be worked out hopefully pretty soon, especially now that the actors are on strike.
Give me a date.
I would say...
I need to know.
All right. I won't shy away from this. I would say, and then I'll probably be wrong, but I would say by the end of September, we'll be back at work.
Okay.
I only say that because, like, you're right. They're running out of stuff. They're going to get this situation where they're going to have a bunch of TV shows come out in September. Emmys are going to be happening. It's going to be...
Emmys are not happening. That's also the saddest part.
They might not be happening.
They might not happening, right?
Yeah.
So, like, there's all these things that are coming up. I think it will... I know they're saying that they want to get it all resolved by the beginning of September. I think it'll be closer to the end of September. I think it's going to hurt until then.
I do want to remind people who are listening that, there's something to be said about all the shows that we enjoy and love watching and love talking about with our friends. And there's a whole economy of people who want to make a living continuing to do that. And it's not all glamorous work, and people just want to get paid for the work that they're doing. That's what these strikes seem to be about. It is a wider conversation about the future of this industry. Anthony, Carolina, I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much.
Of course. Carolina Bartczak is an actor and the host of a podcast about the film industry called 10_1 the podcast. Anthony Q. Farrell is a writer and showrunner. His credits include The Office, Little Mosque on the Prairie, Run the Burbs, Shelved, and a whole lot more. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. You're listening to Commotion. Listen, before we go, I just want to tell you a quick story. Okay, so in March, I went to the film festival in my hometown. That's the Kingston Canadian Film Festival. It's the largest film festival of only Canadian films, by the way. Now, the thing about my hometown is there is a wonderful tradition of incredible musicians out of Kingston. There's a Tragically Hip, there's Sarah Harmer, the Glorious Sons. And on one of the evenings of the festival, this band called Tiny Horse played the Toucan, which is has this tiny little stage. It's a wonderful place. But the energy in the room, the way that everyone rallied around Tiny Horse, it was just like anything I've ever seen. It was like everyone in the room knew that Tiny Horse are the next ones out of Kingston. They just put out this song. It's a song about intimacy. It's a song about friendship and summer. This is The Girls.
They're the baddest ladies you've ever seen. You won't find them in magazines. It's not the stuff they like to read. Summer nights in the West End, chin wagging with your best friend. It doesn't matter what we do.
That is The Girls by Tiny Horse from Kingston, Ontario. And listen, that is it for the show today. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. I'm going to be here tomorrow. I hope you're going to be here tomorrow too. If you are, I'll see you then.